After 5 years of being enslaved and overworked, Shin realized his life was a waste of space, and as his mind began breaking down from being hated by his family, he deliberately crossed a red light so that he could hug Truck-kun, ending his miserable life in that instant. However, his soul was reincarnated as an abandoned baby in the freezing wilderness, but an old disgusting man saved his life, never knowing the truth of what happened to his parents. His father was once the lord of their nation, and even helped the farmers when their harvests were going through droughts. But although Oliveria had freed his empire from slavery and starvation, he had a fat-ass wife and was being conspired against by the Archduke and the other nobles as they plotted to erase his existence before he became the king of their nation. A few days later, he received a letter from the nobles, wishing to finally crown him as the emperor at the capital. But when the disgusting ugly bitch heard those words, she worried that the others were plotting to assassinate him at the capital. Even so, he comforted her, reminding her that he was once the greatest demon hunter in the world, and so he took off on his journey. Throughout the following weeks, women began getting kidnapped across their village, and a policeman told the women a secret, revealing that Lord Oliveria was likely selling them off as slaves. The entire town began eating their narrative, not realizing this was all part of the fake police's trap. So the following morning, they claimed to have found the kidnapped women in Oliveria's carriage and uncovered all the women who were missing after his disappearance. The entire town was outraged, so as they appeared outside of his house with his fat-ass wife inside, they unleashed all of their flames to burn it down. That was the same night Oliveria had returned from the capital, wondering why the king didn't meet him in the ghetto Starbucks. But as he saw his mansion burning down, he rushed to his home, seeing the dead body of his wife. All of the villagers screamed at him for kidnapping and enslaving their wives, and were glad the military police saved them. But Oliveria reminded them that police didn't even exist in their f***ing world. So as he realized who was behind their plan, he got up laughing, realizing that he had sacrificed his entire life to save their empire, only for them to kill off the only thing he loved. As he stared back at them, he swore to kill off all of humanity, allowing the power of the devil to consume him, becoming the first human to transform into a demon, and wiped out their entire city in a massive explosion. However, Shin was still miraculously born from his dead mother's body and was rescued by the old man from the freezing snow. Throughout the following years, he was able to become the last airbender and even unlock the Forbidden Void storage system, but decided to hide his abilities to appear ordinary. Even so, Merlin knew Shin was secretly reincarnated from another world, since he was the only human able to cast spells without an incantation, but continued lying to himself so he could have a normal grandson. However, an ugly, disgusting hag began screaming at him for hunting a dangerous boar, but he told her that he wasn't scared since she looked like one anyway.
What did he say?
Merlin told him to be nicer to his ugly grandma, but his uncle realized that he had to make their sword training even harder now. And so 2 years passed in his new world, when his grandpa decided to reveal the sinister secret hiding in their forest. 10 years ago, the first demon was born and nearly destroyed a nation, but although Merlin saved the world, he was now a sack of old useless bones. So in order to protect their world, he decided to teach his son domain expansion, allowing him to find the demons in their surrounding vicinity. Even though only 1 in a million humans were able to use this ability, Shin cast his domain expansion within an instant, covering the entire forest, and extended even further than Merlin's. Merlin felt something off about his aura, but Shin sensed the presence of a demon deep in the forest. And as it continued devouring the bodies of animals, Shin had already found the demon. However, as Shin unsheathed his sword, Merlin screamed at him to stand back, but Shin continued dashing forward. And right before he was killed, he activated his air jets to dodge the demon's attack, and used his momentum to dash back, slashing the demon's neck off with a single strike. This was the first time in Merlin's life seeing a demon being killed with a single strike, and wondered how he had enchanted his sword and boots. As he slept that night, Merlin thought of him as his own grandson, and although Melinda felt the same way, they knew it was time to reveal the truth. So after his sword training with Michael the next day, Merlin told him that they needed to have a talk, and revealed that he wasn't his grandchild. Although Merlin had no idea how he was stillborn from his mother's dead body, he revealed that he had no idea who his parents were. Even so, he wondered how Shin wasn't sad hearing those words, but Shin revealed that he had always looked up to him as his father, so he didn't need anyone other than his ugly, worthless ass. 5 years later, his family had gathered to celebrate his 15th birthday, but since he was now an adult in their world, Merlin decided to show them the extent of his powers, and took them to the wilderness as it was too dangerous to do it anywhere else.
イメージは燃焼、火種を生み出し、酸素と水素の混合気、それを空気の壁で包んで、着弾と同時に火種から引火させる。
As the squad of mentally ill morons stared back at him, Melinda wondered why he turned their son into a demon lord, and screamed at him to reveal the source of power in his body. However, he wanted to keep his process for achieving such a powerful body a secret. It was because he had signed up for the best weight loss program in the world, Hims, a brand that prioritizes your health and wellness, giving you a realistic approach to finally achieve the body you've always dreamed of. With unlimited access to licensed providers, Hims customizes your weight loss journey to fit your circumstances, and even provides a weight and habit tracker for maintaining your health. And for those who wish to get a body like Gojo's sooner, so they could finally talk to a girl instead of being lonely their entire life.
Damn!
Hims compounded GLP-1 injections help people lose an average of 11.7 pounds in just their first month. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for Hims' weight loss program to finally get closer to having a body that pulls a harem of chicks, and you'll have them flocking to your bed easier than an isekai protagonist. And on top of that, Hims offers one of the most accessible pricings in the industry, even while having their factories approved by the FDA. With oral medication kits starting as low as $69 a month with a 10-month plan, and compounded GLP-1 injections starting as low as $165 with a 12-month plan. To get your personalized plan started now, click the link in my description and start your journey into becoming a real-life anime protagonist. You'll finally be hotter, and won't have to worry about your 2 harem chicks getting stolen away by a group of morons because you're a weak, ugly, disgusting loser like Shin. As the council of dickheads gathered around once more, they realized that Shin's powers were enough to destroy a national army, and would even cause wars. Because of that, Decium asked Merlin to enroll him in the Magic Academy, but Merlin thought he was planning to assimilate him into his country. But when Shin wondered what he meant by his own country, Decium revealed that he had been hiding his identity, and confessed that he was the king of their nation. Michael was the commander of the Knight's Order, and Decium went on to reveal that Merlin was the hero of his nation, and he saved his life at the last instant with Melinda. She used to be a hot-ass chick before becoming a worthless old hag, and together they defeated the demon, although his body was never found. Hearing those words, Shin wondered how he never knew they were once in a party together, but Chris revealed that they were actually husband and wife. A few weeks later, Shin was on his way to the capital, but when they arrived at Merlin's mansion, the door opened to reveal the maids and butlers who were going to serve him. However, Merlin realized this was Decium's idea, so he told Shin to explore the town while they dealt with his bullshit. As Shin went around the stores, it was his first time buying something, but after exploring the capital, he was lost in one of the alleys where all good things happen. Just then, he heard the voice of 2 chicks who were about to get isekai plot development, so Shin asked the girls if those ugly bastards were bothering them. However, when the addicts confronted him, this guy was twitching because of how bad he needed his next fix. But as he tried punching Shin, he evaded his attack and knocked 2 of them down, before crushing the third's knife with his hand and knocking him out. As the first hottie tried asking him how he broke a dagger, he told her he had a different dagger for her, before seeing the biggest plot-sized personality of his life, and realized he found the girl of his dreams. A few minutes later at a cafe, Maria thanked him for saving them, and introduced Big Tits McGee as Sicilian. When he tried to shake Sicilian's hand, her floodgates began breaking down, but as Maria started teasing her, she grabbed his hand and climaxed in that instant. Just then, Maria revealed they were applying to the Magic Academy, and wished she could meet the Wise Man and the Magic Empress, and especially wanted to get destroyed by their mysterious child. However, Shin's virgin ass decided to leave before she recognized him and took her clothes off in public. But once he was gone, Maria noticed that Sicilian was still staring at him. So as she tried asking if she could kiss him, Sicilian was in a different world. But when Maria asked if she could make him her boyfriend, Sicilian screamed that she can't, having fallen from Maria's trap. Sicilian confessed that her heart started pounding when she saw him, But Maria knew she wanted something else to be pounding her. On the day of the entrance exam, Shin wondered if he would ever see Sicilian again. But as he decided to check the notice board, a worthless loser began commanding him to stand aside. With Shin ignoring his useless face, the loser tried to push him, but Shin twisted his arm. So as the addict grew angry, he said his name was Kurt, and that he was the heir of Count Rietsberg. But as he threatened to end Shin, another bastard arrived, telling him that flaunting his authority was against the royal decree. For this reason, he said Kurt could be punished by the royals, but as the moron decided to apologize, August told him to leave. After the bastard walked his ugly addict ass away, August introduced himself to Shin. But when Shin noticed his last name was Earl's Hyde, he realized he was King Decium's son. Although August wanted to keep his identity concealed, Shin realized they were practically cousins. But Maria wondered how Shin was friendly with the prince, and Sicilian began wondering who Shin really was. When the first phase of the entrance exams began, the students began solving a written test. But when they advanced to the practical exam, the instructor told them to aim at the target with their best magic spell. As the first student was up, Shin was excited to see another magic user of his age. When another moron made his attempt, Shin continued losing his mind at how cringe their incantations were. But as all the other students continued screaming useless words, Shin wondered when he signed himself up for a psychiatric asylum. By the time it was his turn, the instructor warned him to keep his power under control and told him not to destroy the training room. A few days later, Shin and August discovered they passed the exam and became the greatest buddies. But when Shin submitted his ID to the administrator, she realized who he was, so after giving him his uniform and textbooks, she said they had been enchanted with defensive magic, and warned him not to re-enchant them. However, that night, Kurt was angry for being overshadowed by Shin, and as he thought Shin must have cheated in the exams, he decided to erase his existence. Meanwhile, at his home, Shin began re-enchanting his uniform, so as he nullified the magic defense and shock suppression spells, he began overriding it with auto-healing and absolute absorption spells. As he barely managed to succeed, he screamed at his magic somehow working. But when Melinda burst inside to shut him up, she realized he had just broken the laws of magic itself. The following day, when they arrived for the entrance ceremony, she warned Shin not to tell anyone about his re-enchanted uniform, but the other families began rushing at them after recognizing Merlin and Melinda. Before long, they arrived inside the hall, but when Shin was summoned to give the opening speech, Sicilian and Maria realized that he was the hero's grandson. However, while Shin was giving his speech, the sight of his ugly face only made Kurt angrier. The next day, after their classes were over, Maria told Shin that Sicilian was being harassed by a stalker, who was taking advantage of his family's power to threaten her. When Shin wondered where the loser was, Kurt screamed her name, demanding to know why she was talking to another man. As he tried to pull her away, Shin smacked his hand off and promised to protect her no matter what happens. With Kurt growing desperate, he yelled that Sicilian was his fiancé, but as Sicilian revealed that she already declined his engagement, she told him to leave her already. Realizing he had no other option, he threatened to have her worthless father fired from the bureau, since his father was his commander. However, August screamed at him to stop, revealing that he would inform the king of his insolence, and told him to get lost if he wanted to forget about this. But after he left, Shin thought he was definitely going to return, so August reminded him that he swore to protect her no matter what happens, causing her floodgates to break down. So to protect her, Shin offered to take them to his house, and when August offered to come along, Julius and Thor popped up as escorts, asking to also accompany them. So a few hours later, Shin began explaining to Merlin and Melinda that he intended to overwrite the enchantment on Sicilian's uniform. But when Melinda asked Sicilian if she was worthy of it, revealing that her uniform would become national treasure grade protective gear, Sicilian told her that she wasn't. As she began apologizing for taking advantage of Shin's kindness, she revealed that she just wanted him to save her, and swore to stay away from him. But Melinda stopped her from running, saying it was only a test to know if she was using him. When Sicilian began to cry, Shin revealed that he knew she wasn't taking advantage of him, and wanted her to use him in any way she wanted.
What do you mean by that?
As she took off her uniform, Sicilian revealed she was really happy when Shin saved her, and Melinda knew she needed to make her his wife. A few minutes later, he began to overwrite the enchantment on her uniform, so as he revealed that it would protect her against sneak attacks. He said it could only defend the parts of her body that were covered by the uniform. However, by the end of that day, Shin had re-enchanted the others' uniforms, but Maria told him that she had no interest in wearing a national-grade protective gear. Opening up a portal, Shin led them to the cabin where he was raised, but when they realized they had just teleported, he took them back to the capital. The only limitation to his power was having to visit those places, but Maria's head nearly exploded while imagining how much power he possessed. The following morning, while Shin was escorting Sicilian and Maria to school, he realized he wasn't sensing any negative magic around them. But when Sicilian began apologizing for making him come all the way to her house to pick her up, Shin told her that he would never allow her to get into any danger. When they arrived at school, August noticed the girls flanking him. But as he wondered if they had a threesome before school even started, Shin told him that he's the one who looked like a virgin. Just then, the teacher named Alfred arrived, so after he showed them around the school, he explained that they will be needing to split into different study groups based on their magical prowess. Realizing none of the groups would be a challenge to Shin, August suggested he start his own study group, and the biggest canons of all anime said she'd be willing to join as well. And as Alfred realized they had their 5 members all ready to make a group, he offered to be their faculty advisor, so Sicilian begged Shin to teach her everything he knew about anatomy as well. That night, as Rietsberg began screaming for Kurt, he told him that he received a summons to the king, and began scolding him for throwing his authority around. But Kurt thought he was special, and began saying that he shouldn't be treated the same way as commoners, and as he told his father that he would continue abusing his authority, he blamed Shin for everything that was happening. Realizing Kurt was losing his mind, Rietsberg knocked him to the floor, and as he said he would punish him for being useless, he told the security to lock him up. The following day, after Shin and the girls heard that Kurt had been grounded, Shin began wondering if Kurt had always been an ass. But as Julius told them that he wasn't always like that, Thor revealed that they attended the same middle school. And as he explained that Kurt began to change when he started hanging out with a shady teacher named Strom. He said the transferred magic teacher was actually exiled from the Empire. As he went on to say that Strom was always wearing an eye patch over his eyes. He said he was supposed to be blind, but Shin wondered why that name reminded him of his father. Meanwhile, the creepy teacher had arrived in Kurt's home. But as Oliverius Strom found Kurt tied up inside a room, he thought he was useless and pathetic. However, Kurt was still angry, so as he began saying that Shin was a jackass for stealing his girl, Strom began filling his body with demonic energy, telling him to get his revenge on Shin. Back at school, while Shin and the other students were heading to their next class, Shin sensed the presence of a demon. But when he looked towards the bushes, he spotted Kurt hiding in the distance. As the others noticed him, Kurt unleashed fire to obliterate them, but as Shin managed to shield it with a barrier, the flames nearly burned off his entire body, but he managed to tell Maria and Sicilian to channel magic into their uniform. Immediately, Kurt unleashed another flame on his barrier, but as Shin managed to hold it off, they realized his hands were burned. Luckily, the auto-healing enchantment on his uniform began healing him, but as Shin told them that Kurt actually wanted to kill them, August said he would be arrested for attempted murder. Before their eyes, Kurt began oozing with immense dark energy that ravaged the ground around him, but as Shin realized he was demonized, his body continued wiggling until the bones in his neck were all broken. As he completed his transformation to a demonoid, Shin told August to get to a safe spot with the others, saying he would stop Kurt on his own. So after they were gone, Shin realized he could fight back. But as Kurt began running towards him, he unleashed a massive fireball that Shin narrowly dodged. When he tried charging again, Shin began blasting him with his own flames, eventually knocking him down. But as Kurt managed to stand and began screaming at Shin to die, Shin wondered how a demonoid was able to speak, but Kurt was only desperate to end him. Immediately, he unleashed an enormous amount of flame that blew up around his barrier. But as Shin escaped unscathed, he blasted him with lightning, nearly frying his entire body. As he realized that Kurt could feel pain, Shin began wondering if he could turn him back from being a demon. But as Kurt began launching fireballs that he easily dodged, the nutcase wouldn't slow down. And as he began gathering up magic power into himself to create an explosion, Shin tried stopping him with a lightning blast. But it repelled on the barrier, Realizing the enormous magic would blow up the entire school, Shin summoned his ultrasonic vibration. So as he activated his air jets to rush towards Kurt, he evaded his attacks and slashed his head in a clean strike. However, the guilt began weighing on him as he wondered if killing him was the right thing to do. Just then, his friends arrived, but when Sicilian began checking for any injuries, Maria wondered how he managed to defeat the demon on his own. A few hours later, Strom was watching everything, but he considered his experiment a success and was glad to finally find his son. By the time Shin arrived at his home, they realized that King Decium had been waiting for him, and the king's guard began announcing that Shin would be awarded the First Order of Merit for killing a demonoid. However, when Merlin began thinking that Decium was trying to use him for political purposes, Decium explained that it was the same award they were honored with after slaying a demonoid several years ago. And with the news having spread to the entire city, he thought it was only right to honor Shin for an equal achievement. Realizing he had a point, Merlin decided to permit the award, but threatened to leave the capital if Decium tried to exploit Shin. A few days later, while Shin, Maria, and Sicilian were walking through the street, all the girls noticed their new hero, and as they wished he would use his sword to air jet their insides.
Hey yo, what the f?
They wondered if the ugly bitch on his side was his girl. Just then, Shin decided to apologize for dragging her into all the publicity, but as Sicilian told him that it was nothing to worry about, she said she was willing to stay by his side. But as Shin heard these words, he realized that he had told her the exact same thing. Meanwhile, two Security Bureau investigators named Carlos and Alt were investigating the demonoid incident. And as Carlos revealed that Kurt was visited by a middle school teacher before he was demonized, Alt suggested they interrogate him. When they arrived inside Strom's room, the men introduced themselves, but when they noticed that Strom was using sensory magic, Alt wondered if he was really blind. However, as he began saying that they discovered he taught students magic in a study group, he wondered if he learned what happened to one of his students. So as Strom revealed that he did, he went on to say that he never imagined Kurt would become a demonoid. With Strom having accidentally slipped up, Alt decided to invite him to examine Kurt's body, saying that they were trying to assemble a team of specialists that could unravel how he became a demonoid. But as he followed Alt down the tunnel, he wondered why they intended to examine a body here, but Alt said they were under difficult circumstances. At that moment, an army of knights and mages surrounded them, so as Alt began telling Strom that they intended to arrest him, he explained that he had earlier slipped up, because after the incident, King Decium had issued a gag order that prohibited anyone from revealing that Kurt was the demonoid. So with no one else in the capital knowing the truth, Alt wondered how he managed to discover Kurt was the demon. Realizing he was exposed, Strom decided to admit that he actually used Kurt as an experiment. But as he revealed that he had completed all of his experiments in the capital, Alt commanded the mages to attack him. Meanwhile outside, Shin and his friends were heading to Mark's workshop. But as the walls exploded, Shin and August spotted Strom inside the parade grounds. Noticing the patch over his eyes, Shin wondered if he was the creepy teacher, so when August told him that he was, Alt revealed that he turned Kurt into the demonoid. As this discovery made Shin angry, he rushed towards him with an ultrasonic vibration, launching a flame towards him, but Strom repelled it. Immediately, Shin nearly sliced him from behind, but as he dodged it, Shin began attacking him again, until Strom released a fiery blast that repelled him. Wanting to catch him, Shin summoned large spikes from the ground, but as Strom rose above them, Shin realized he was hovering in midair. Determined to end him anyway, Shin launched with his air jets, slicing across his face, and unleashed fire on him, but as Strom released a massive energy that repelled him again, it broke his eye patch. At that moment, Shin noticed his eyes, but as he realized that he was also a demonoid, Strom told him that humans have become an insignificant creature, and said he would use them for as many experiments as he wanted. Desperate to stop him, Shin unleashed flames towards him, but as he evaded it, Shin hoped that his next attack would hit. So as Strom prepared his own attack, powerful rays from the sun blasted down on him, and as the rays increased with immense heat that fried his entire body, Strom screamed from the pain as he exploded in a huge smoke. With the heat ray having turned the ground to glass, Thor began wondering how Shin managed to create the immense heat. But Shin realized something was off about the explosion. Meanwhile, Strom had escaped from the city, and as he realized he only survived because he released the explosive magic that allowed him to escape, he thought Shin was a formidable opponent, and concluded on staying away from him. A few days later, while Shin and his friends were walking through the city, Shin told August that Strom was still alive, and explained that he tried to recreate the heat ray in the wilderness, but discovered that it created no explosion. As he revealed that Strom must have pretended to explode so that he could trick them, August realized it was possible, and told Shin that the royals would sponsor his weapon, seeing as he was the biggest threat to Strom. After they arrived inside the workshop, the useless blacksmith named Harold began screaming at Mark to get to work. But when August introduced himself, Harold realized he was the prince and all the workers bowed immediately. When August told him that he intended to make a weapon for Shin, he revealed that Shin was the hero's grandson, blowing their floodgates open. But as Harold agreed to make the weapon, he said it was the greatest honor of his worthless life. Meanwhile, in the Blusphia Empire, a useless man named Zest was telling the ruler that the capital was in commotion over the increase of demonoids. So as the ruler thought it was his chance to take over the kingdom, he left to prepare for war. Back in the capital, after Shin and his friends left the workshop, he began wondering what accessory he could buy for Sicilian. But as she thought he intended to buy her a ring, she began freaking out at the thought of a proposal.
アクセサリーに防御魔法を付与した方が。
そうですよね。
Noticing her disappointment, Shin realized he got her hopes up, so in an attempt to make up for his blunder, he took her to a jewelry store and blew all of his allowance to buy her a fake cheap ring. However, as he put it on her finger, Sicilian thought it was an expression of his affection, so when he held her hand, she realized he really wanted to protect her. A few days later in the castle, Shin was summoned into the palace for his honorary award, so as King Decium began saying he was deserving of it, he conferred upon him the first order of merit. As he went on to announce that Shin was only invited to attend the Magic Academy, he reaffirmed his promise to not exploit him for political or military gain, and warned everyone to never forget. The following day, as Shin, Sicilian, and Maria began heading to school, they realized that a crowd was waiting to see Shin outside. But when they began rushing towards him, Shin shut the door at the nightmare. Realizing they couldn't go through the crowd, he suggested they use the portal instead. But as he saw the greatest weapons of mass distraction before his eyes, he nearly had a different type of explosion. A few minutes later, as he began telling the entire class that they needed to level up, he said there could be another attack on the capital, and wanted everyone to be ready for it. Knowing he had a plan, August decided to ask how he wanted them to level up, so Shin said he wished to increase their level of attack and defense magic. However, he wanted to first see how much magic power they could control, and asked Maria to conjure up a barrier. As she did, he realized that her barrier was more useless than her face.
Damn!
And told Sicilian to show her what a real barrier was supposed to look like. Immediately, Sicilian cast her own barrier, and as they realized it was thicker than their hopes of ever succeeding at anything, Shin revealed that her ring was enchanted with control visualization. He told them that Strom had used a similar barrier to block his attack, and said that with enough magic, they could equally block any attack. Meanwhile, in the Blusphia Empire, Strom was still recovering from his injuries, but as a girl named Miria told him that the Empire was preparing to go to war with the capital, he realized he could finally carry out his plans. Back in the capital, after Shin and his friends arrived at his home, they revealed that they had started magic training. But as Thor said the training was too intense, Merlin explained that Shin used magic by visualizing the process rather than the outcome. As he thought it made him special, he decided to summon a gate portal, one of Shin's original spells, and explained that even they could use Shin's magic once they understood his mechanism and learned to combine it with the right visualization. A few days later, after Shin and his friends returned to the workshop for his weapon, Shin examined the sword and pushed a trigger to detach the blade. As Tony thought it was incredible, August began to examine the second prototype. So after they left the workshop, he told Shin that he wanted to adopt the same weapon for his army, as he thought it would be cheaper if they mass-produced it. When Shin began wondering why he wanted to mass-produce weapons, August told him that a war was coming. But as the thought of war dreaded them, August vowed to never get them involved. However, Shin decided to declare his intentions to support them in the battle, and seeing as they were now friends, he said he would not abandon them. That same day at the castle, after King Decium discovered that the Imperial army were advancing towards the capital, he commanded that his forces be sent out. Meanwhile in the Empire, the demons had begun to destroy the city and even eliminated the people. But when Strom and Miria arrived, they realized everything was going according to their plan. Knowing that Earlshide's troops would eventually appear, Strom suggested they advance to the next phase. A few days later, when Harold arrived in his castle, he told his commanders to eliminate all the demons in his city. But after they left, he realized that Strom was waiting in his chair. As Strom began saying that he had been waiting to finish him off, he unleashed the magic in his eyes to trap him in a casting circle, and released a blast that obliterated him and blew a hole in the wall. The following day, when Dominic and Rupert arrived in the city with their scouting parties, they began wondering how demons managed to ravage the entire city. Just then, they began hearing Strom's voice, and as Rupert realized he was responsible for the attack, they spotted an army of demonoids before them. After they returned to the capital, Dominic explained everything to King Decium and said they barely managed to escape. At school, after Alfred announced that Strom was spotted in the Empire, he said they were given notice to level up for a possible war, and revealed that they would be having joint training with the Knight Training School. However, when the class was over, Shin noticed that the rest of the students were worried. So when he asked why, Maria revealed that the students at the Knight Training always looked down on them, and called them sprouts because they lacked physical strength. The next day, while they were gathered outside the gateway, Shin realized they had been split into groups of 8, with every team being a combination of magicians and knights. Before long, they began riding off in a wagon, so as the first student introduced himself as Craze, saying he was a first-year top seat of the Knight Military Institute. Miranda introduced herself as the second seat. However, Shin thought their faces were as useless as their fighting abilities, but as he decided to ask if they had ever fought a demon, Miranda thought he was only bragging because he killed a demonoid, as she continued by saying that the Knight Training School was the best, and that the name of their useless school was enough to scare any demon. Craze told Shin not to slow them down. After stopping deep inside the forest, Cecilian began wondering where their advisors were. But when Siegfried and Christina appeared, saying they were looking forward to working with them, Shin realized that they were the instructors. As they began walking deeper into the forest, Shin sensed the presence of a demon in his search magic, so when Siegfried told the knights that the demon would soon appear, they readied their sword for the fight. Just then, a boar charged towards them, but as they tried attacking it, it evaded them and kicked Miranda away. Without hesitating, the boar rushed back to the others, knocking them aside. But when it returned to end their worthless lives, Shin drew his blade and sliced its head with a clean strike. While the knights were still in shock, Christina appeared before them, saying that the demon was actually a weak one. As she called them a group of useless low-level losers, she said they knew nothing of the battlefield, and as she said they were weak, she told them to take the rest of the exercise seriously. Just then, Cecilian began using restoration magic to heal Craze's wound. But as the boys noticed her huge plot, Lord have mercy.
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
In an attempt to win her over, Craze cleared the bushes to create a path for her, and as Noon offered to carry her across a pond, Kent wondered if she would drink his water. As they fell in love with her, Shin wished he let all of them die off. Just then, Siegfried warned them about a new demon, but as Shin cast his search magic, he discovered there was actually a horde of them. At that moment, Noon and Miranda began running towards them, and as they revealed that there were hundreds of demons approaching, Shin offered to take care of it. As Siegfried granted him permission, Christina commanded everyone to stand behind him. So with Shin ready to show off, he created blue fireballs using compressed hydrogen. And as he enhanced it with oxygen, they noticed an S-rank calamity rushing towards them. But Shin unleashed a massive energy blast that obliterated the demons and spread through the forest. By the time the smoke cleared, they discovered that nearly half of the forest had been destroyed, and Craze realized that Shin's powers were immeasurable. Wanting to make amends, Miranda decided to apologize to Shin for being rude, and admitted that she actually envied him for being Merlin's grandson, but said he was not on their level. As they moved to another part of the forest, they came across a bear demon. But when August, Maria, and Cecilian summoned a flame, they blasted it at the same time. As the knights rushed forward, Shin protected Craze with a barrier, but as they pierced its body, Miranda flew to eliminate it. With the monster dead, Cecilian arrived to heal the boys again, so as she began to restore them, Christina realized that the group was starting to learn how to coordinate swords and magic. At the same time, Tony and another half of the group were wandering through a different part of the forest, but when Mark began wondering why Giulio hated him so much, Tony admitted that he once stole his crush. But even though they broke up, he already made her give him head, making Giulio contemplate Isekai'ing himself. In another part of the forest, another group of worthless knights were trying to intimidate Alice with her group, and the useless boys told them that they could run home to mommy if they were afraid. However, when the girls realized they could barely hold off low-level demons, Alice summoned her flames to obliterate them, so as Yuri unleashed her ice, Lynn lost control of her lightning, and burned the entire forest. By the time they all arrived back at the capital, Shin noticed that the girls were looking uglier than Melinda's worthless face. So as Alice explained that Lynn lost control of her power, Shin realized that Julio was still angry. A few weeks later, while the girls were training in the wilderness, August realized that everyone was getting better. But when he asked to speak with them, he began revealing that the Demonoids were running riot over the empire. And as he said, they had destroyed all the towns and villages around the kingdom. He said that every single noble had been annihilated. With Demonoids starting to increase, August said they needed to form a coalition to stand against them. And as he revealed that they were multiplying with every attack, Shin realized that Strom was turning more people into Demonoids. Realizing he would eventually attack the capital, Shin knew they needed to be ready, so after he suggested they go on training camp, Yuri wondered whose home they would camp in. With Shin having no clue, he began asking for recommendations. So as Maria told him that Cecilian's home would be perfect and said her family owned a hot spring, Shin agreed immediately. So that night, after he told Merlin and Melinda about the training camp, Merlin said it was a good idea, given the critical circumstances with the increasing Demonoids. However, when Melinda realized that Shin might try to develop plot with Cecilian, she screamed that she didn't trust him and offered to follow them since she was too useless to do something better with her life. But Merlin offered to come along. A few weeks later, after the students left the capital in wagons, they soon arrived deep inside the forest, and as Shin sensed the presence of demons, August revealed that they were medium-sized. After they stepped out of their wagons, Thor began wondering who was willing to take them on. So as Alice offered to kill them, Yuri and Tony immediately butted in. Wanting to make it a fair pick, Shin decided to use chopsticks to select a winner, and Lynn emerged on top. As she faced off with the demons, they rushed towards her, but she summoned a tremendous breeze that blew off the girls' plot armor, throwing up the monsters and stacking them up in a pile. By the time they arrived at the city of Claude, they realized it was a town of hot springs, and when they dropped off at Cecilian's manor, the workers welcomed them from their journey.
Sensational.
That night, while the boys were soaking in a hot spring, Merlin decided to thank them for sticking with Shin, and began saying that Shin grew up without having any friends. He had felt bad for him at the time, but said he was now happy to see that he was surrounded by many good friends. At the same time, August began saying that he was only happy to have Shin as a friend, as he was the only one who considered him an equal. But as his words made Shin happy, he told Merlin that he was grateful that he raised and trained him, as he thought he would have been completely useless if he had not done so. The life he allowed him to have had given him all the amazing friends he had, so as he told him thank you, Merlin began crying from all the emotions. At the same time, plot development was occurring on the other side of the hot springs, and I mean massive plot development. A few days later, during a magic control training, Merlin noticed that the students were starting to gain control over their magic. But when Lynn's magic nearly blew up, she managed to suppress it. By the following day, Melinda was explaining magic gear enchantment to them, and Shin was glad that the camp was turning out better than he expected. So when they advanced to his magic training, Melinda thought his friends were strong enough to fight the Demonoids. But when Shin told her that he wanted them to get even stronger, including himself, the thought scared his friends into backing away. However, as he offered to show them a new spell he visualized, they cast a barrier to protect themselves from the effect, and August told the others to not let down their guard. With the hollow purple spell having ravaged the ground, Thor began wondering how all the mountains weren't destroyed, but August thought it was because Shin channeled the blast into one direction. However, as they were about to leave, he told Shin to take him back to the castle using the gate portal, saying he needed to know about the Demonoids' attacks. As they arrived, a hot blondie with massive plot appeared before them, but when Shin wondered who she was, August told him that she was his fiancée. So as the girl introduced herself as Elizabeth, August wondered why she came, but she began screaming at him for ignoring her. Just then, his sister appeared, calling out August for ditching both of them, and saying she had always wanted to meet her idol Melinda. Her name was May. But when August wondered what they really wanted, Elizabeth revealed that they wished to join them at the training camp. But as August thought they were ridiculous, he began saying that it wasn't a place for fun and games, and said they couldn't possibly get the king's permission to leave. However, Deciem said that they could leave, as he thought it would feel like a vacation. That evening, as August introduced Elizabeth and May to the others, he said they would be staying with them. But as Sicilian noticed Shin staring at her and wondered what was wrong, Shin's body temperature rose along with something else. However, when Mei met Melinda, she wondered how she still looked so young after raising a child as useless as Shin. But when the rest of the girls thought it would be a pain raising a child with broken abilities, Sicilian tried to stop them.
シンくんとの子供なら可愛いでしょうし。
Congratulations, you played yourself.
However, August thought this was the final clue Shin needed to hear. That night, after Shin found Sicilian all by herself, she decided to apologize for what she earlier said. But as Shin told her that he was actually flattered to hear her confession, he reminded her of how they met and admitted that he thought she was cute the first time he saw her. As his words made her blush, Sicilian admitted that she also thought he was handsome the first time she saw him.
彼女になってくれる。
When Shin wondered why their disgusting faces ruined the moment, Maria and Alice told him that they intended to witness it. So after everyone gathered, Shin formally announced that Sicilian was now his girl. The following day, beach scene, you know what that means. Plot, and even massive grandma plot.
Stop it. Get some help.
After they arrived, Shin told them that they would be training with his ball. Sorry, I meant with his volleyball. As the game began, Alice hurled the ball towards the sky, and as she followed it, Shin realized she had enhanced her body. But when she knocked it towards the sand, Olivia managed to tackle it. Immediately, Tony launched it with a wind vision, but August repelled it. So as Lynn elevated above the net, she pitched it with a flame attack that nearly consumed Yuri. As Sicilian thought the game was amazing, Mark told Shin that he was incredible, but Shin knew it took an unexpected turn. That night, while they were all gathered in a room, Shin wondered how they all knew each other, so Maria told him that there was always a coming out party between the royals and nobles when they turned 5. As August revealed that he had been childhood friends with Elizabeth, and always thought she was special because she treated him like a regular person. He admitted that it made him interested in her. However, these words made Maria sad, and as she began wondering why she was so alone, Lynn said her ugly ass face wasn't helping.
You're a victim.
Just then, Shin sensed the presence of Melinda.
Yes! 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 Yes!
ごめん、そんなつもりは。シン、あんた何やってんだい。
No! No! No!
With Melinda's eyes blazing behind him, she wondered why they were rushing to develop plot, but as she thought his useless face was a bad influence to everyone, she summoned them all for a meeting. However, when Shin woke up the following morning, he realized he barely got any sleep remembering those massive cannons. But as he came across Sicilian, they blushed at the sight of each other. Wanting to be a gentleman, he decided to invite her to breakfast, but she asked to speak with him privately. When they arrived outside, Sicilian explained that she wanted him to meet her family, and Shin realized that it was time to confront them. While inside their home, Sicilian's parents Cecil and Eileen began wondering why they came, so as Shin told them that he was dating their daughter, he said he wanted to ask for their approval. As these words made Cecil excited, he began thanking Shin for choosing his daughter. But when Eileen told him to sit his ass down, she explained to Shin that he could only be allowed to date Sicilian for marriage, because they were a noble family who could only do what was acceptable. However, from Shin's stern look, she realized he was willing to accept, so when he told her that he was, Eileen congratulated Sicilian on getting engaged. Meanwhile in the Empire, as Miria told Strom that they had been attacking all the caravans on the road, Strom said it was time to launch their grand plan. At the same time in the wilderness, Shin was ready to show off a new spell, but his friends put up a strong barrier for their protection, thinking it would be another explosive blast. However, when he told them that it wasn't an attack spell, they decided to remove their barriers. Before their eyes, Shin began transferring his magic into a rock, so as he activated a spell, the rock elevated into the air. With everyone in shock, Elizabeth began wondering what kind of magic it was, so as Shin revealed that it was floating magic. He explained that he used an anti-gravity spell by visualizing the opposite of something falling. Deciding to take it up a notch, he cast the anti-gravity spell, and using floating magic, he elevated before their eyes and applied wind magic to move from side to side. As he landed, calling the experiment a success, Cecilian realized her man was amazing. At night, after Shin told Merlin and Melinda that he was engaged, Cecilian decided to take fault for it. But with Melinda having expected the news, she said she needed to speak with Cecilian's parents before the news went public. By the time they arrived, Cecil welcomed them to his home, but Melinda said they came to tell them something important. So while they sat in the private room, Merlin decided to reveal that Shin was not actually his grandson. And as Melinda began saying that they must have accepted his proposal because they thought he was, she said they had no blood relationship. However, Cecil told them not to think so lowly of his family, and revealed that they approved of Shin's engagement to their daughter, because he valued Cecilian and was always trying to keep her safe. Their decision was based on the consideration for their daughter, so as Eileen affirmed that it was the truth, Melinda apologized for having thought wrongly of them. At the same time, Cecilian began saying that she loved Shin for who he was, and admitted that she had felt that way from their first day together. As her words made Shin happy, he thanked Cecil and Eileen for accepting him for who he was, and said he would protect Cecilian and take care of her forever. A few days later, after Shin and his friends put on new gear, Shin said they would be hunting an S-rank calamity demon. Afraid they weren't strong enough, Olivia tried saying they couldn't possibly defeat it, but Shin said they were better than they imagined, and revealed that their clothing was maxed out defensive combat gear. By the time they arrived in the forest, Cecilian began sensing the presence of a demon, and as she said its size was enormous, they spotted the lion. While making up a plan, Shin began explaining that the lion always moved slowly, so as Cecilian suggested they attack from a distance, he began patting her head for her smart answer, but the others grew jealous. Just then, the lion demon sensed their presence, but when Shin told them to prepare for an attack, they summoned their flames at the same time. At his command, they launched their blasts, and as a massive explosion erupted in the forest, leaving a large hole in the ground, they realized that the lion had been obliterated. With the support group having managed to unleash so much power, Shin thought each member of the attack group could single-handedly annihilate an S-rank calamity on their own. So as they continued through the forest, wiping out all of the demons, Tony drew an ultrasonic vibration and slayed the last one. While Shin was glad that they had successfully leveled up, August said it was time to prepare for his ceremony, and said he couldn't wait to see him at his engagement party. A few days later, as Shin was dressed up for his engagement ceremony, Cecilian entered the room, and as he noticed her huge cannons, he told her she was cute, but she said he looked handsome. As they walked into the dining room, everyone began applauding them, but when King Decium announced that he acknowledged their engagement and was standing as witness, he offered a toast and everyone cheered for the young couple. That night, while Shin and Cecilian were alone on the balcony, he told her that he intended to give her a gift. So as he revealed a ring, he apologized for doing this out of order, and even though their engagement party was over, he decided to ask her to be his bride. Within a few days, the other students had mastered the ability to fly, with Shin having cast floating magic on them, and he was glad that they were starting to power up. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Empire, as Zest told Strom that the last town had been destroyed, Miria realized that Zest managed to starve the commoners while the nobles enjoyed a feast. That eventually induced resentment in them, so that when Strom turned them into a demonoid, they easily slaughtered their feudal lords, and even went on to lay waste to surrounding villages. Miria knew that Strom hated the imperial nobles, but wondered why he decided to victimize the commoners. A few minutes later, as Strom began addressing his army of demonoids, he thanked them for their efforts in destroying the empire. But as he began saying that ravaging the empire was his only objective, he admitted that he had no more use for them. As these words made them angry, the demonoids began wondering why they couldn't continue their attacks on the other cities, and even take over the world, but Strom told them to do whatever they wanted. Realizing his mind was made up, one of the demonoids named Fabro told him that he would carry on his own intentions. But when Strom wondered why his rotten face was still here, Fabro decided to leave. However, after the majority of the demonoids followed him, Zest began asking Strom if allowing them to leave was the right thing to do. But as Strom told him that he already achieved his goal, he said they were free to do whatever they wanted. With Miria unable to suppress her curiosity, she decided to ask why Strom had hated the Empire, having previously learned that he was once an Imperial Duke, and was even in line to be an Emperor. So as Strom decided to reveal his story about how his wife was killed while he was out of town, and how he had transformed into the first demon humanity ever faced, his only remaining goal now was to kill his own son. After Zest and Lawrence left the throne room, Zest began saying that they needed to give Strom a new objective. So as he commanded Lawrence to launch an attack on the capital, he knew this would lure Shin to get involved, and thought his son's appearance would give Strom a new reason to join their war. Meanwhile in the capital, August was having his declaration ceremony, so as King Decium asked if he vowed to serve the land and protect it as the next king, August swore to devote his life to the kingdom and to protect its people. So as King Decium announced that he was officially recognized as the Crown Prince, a man appeared to inform them that demonoids had appeared in the kingdom of Swede. However, when the guards tried to throw him out, August told them to spare him, and said that reports about demonoids were a top priority. As the people grew restless, August began telling them to stay calm, and revealed that they already created a group to resist the demonoids. Deciding to introduce Shin, he revealed that he trained them to get stronger, and said they would eliminate all the demonoids in the neighboring kingdom before revealing his gear. At the same time, the others pulled off their cloaks, so as August told Shin to give a speech of his own, he vowed to completely annihilate anything that threatened the kingdom, and the people he loved. So he ripped off his cloak, announcing that they were the ultimate magicians, and as he activated anti-gravity spell to elevate everyone, they flew out of the city. Meanwhile in the kingdom of Swede, as the knights saw a flare launch into the sky, they thought it was a signal from the border, and realized it was a warning about a demonoid attack, so the leader commanded that the civilians be evacuated. Just then, they spotted the army of demonoids in a distance, so as the demonoids blasted the wall, it dispersed on the barrier. Just then, they spotted the kingdom of Swede, but inside, a woman was running away from two demonoids. As they continued launching blasts towards her, they eventually destroyed the road before her. But when she began asking them to spare her life, one worthless loser tried saying they would kill her, but got kicked off into the dirt. At the center of the kingdom, August began announcing that he was the prince, and said they had acquired enough power to eliminate the demonoids. But as the demonoids heard these words, the people began cheering. In the far side of the town, after the rest of the group separated, Shin told Cecilian to treat the wounded people at the aid station. But as she was about to leave, she told him to be careful. Meanwhile, Lawrence was spying on him, and he thought they would finally discover just how powerful he was. At the same time, Alice and Lynn were running on the rooftop, but as they landed on the ground, Alice cast search magic to scout for demonoids, and noticed one in her radar. However, the demonoid had killed off a bunch of knights, but when the girls landed before him, he noticed their flat bod and wondered why two surfboards were fighting him instead of being at the beach.
No, that one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
As his words made Alice angry, she prepared to burn him alive, but Lynn killed him off before she could. Just then, they heard a scream, but as he unleashed a blast to end him, Alice and Lynn repelled it with their barriers. When the moron said he was about to send their cutting board bodies back to the kitchen, Alice grew angry again, but as she prepared a blast, fire erupted from the ground, consuming him to ashes. At the same time, two demonoids had killed another knight in an alley, but as a casting circle trapped one in ice, the other tried blasting Yuri, but Tony slayed both demons in a flash. On the other side, Julius and Thor had killed off the two demonoids, but inside the aid station, Cecilian was healing the wounded, as Shin began obliterating the demons around him, eventually causing a huge explosion that destroyed the whole place. The rest of them began wondering how he was so strong, but he annihilated them with a gesture. As the sight filled Lawrence with dread, he began wondering how Shin acquired the force of his magic, and thought it was impossible to find his weakness. Meanwhile, August and Maria were no longer sensing the presence of any demonoids, but as she said the area was already cleared up, Fabro appeared before them. As he realized that August was the prince, he told him that he intended to use his head as a trophy, as he thought the rest of his friends would run away once they discovered that their leader was dead. Wanting to catch him off guard, Maria unleashed an explosion from the ground, but as they realized he used two men as shields, he launched a body at them, and hit Maria with a punch. However, her gear managed to dull the pain, but as he snatched her up, Fabro hurled her into a wall. Even so, she emerged from the rubble, but as he noticed that her clothing was rigged with protective magic, Fabro said he would attack her body parts that weren't covered. Deciding to make an attack of her own, Maria hurled a fireball at him, but as it exploded, she continued hurling fireballs. By the time the smoke cleared, she realized he was unscathed, and as they saw his magic gear, Fabro told them that he took it from the magicians. As they recognized it, Maria knew it was a magic-powered barrier that Shin had created for the Swede kingdom. But having learned its weakness, Maria and August split up. Immediately, August unleashed lightning on him, but as he used the barrier to repel it, Maria began hurling fireballs again, creating a huge blast that eventually broke the barrier and burned Fabro's body. However, as he managed to stand, August blasted a hole inside him, killing him at that instant. Inside the king's palace, when he realized the battle was coming to an end, Merlin revealed that they had no need to get involved, and Melinda said they would congratulate the group when it was all over. At the same time, when Lawrence discovered that nearly all the Demonoids had been killed, he realized that Shin was not their only threat, and thought it was only a matter of time before they were all wiped out. Meanwhile, Zest was observing everything from outside the kingdom, and as he admitted that he didn't expect they would be easily defeated, he realized that his plan to gauge Shin's strength had failed. Even so, he asked Miria to create a distraction that would allow the surviving Demonoids to escape.
Minasan, 人間ども